Today is December 20th, 2022. The Lawrence Board of Zoning Appeals is called to order at this time. I need a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes from November 15, 2022.
I motion to approve.
I think there's a mistake.
Oh, where?
It seems to me the last vote on the second setback, one I got didn't have the vote.
On which petition?
The
Winona?
one,
Or Post Road?
yeah.
I will add that.
Did I miss it? I don't think I.
Nope,
see
I
it.
don't see it either. Good catch.
Okay, yeah, it should be on there. And I think
I
it
add
was
that
like
as-
the first one, 5-0, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. When I add it, is it okay for them to be approved with that amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a motion from Shelley. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
I heard Faith first.
All those in favor with the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Minutes stand as written with the amendment. If you've not done so, please sign in the back of the room. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Answer with I do. Thank you. Do we have any special requests tonight, continuance, withdrawals, or waivers?
Yes, petition 22 LUSV 14 for 7955 Oak Landon Road, requested continuance to the February 21st, 2023 meeting with notice. This is the last continuance that the petitioner will be granted. If that case is not heard on the 21st, it will be withdrawn and they cannot refile for 1 year. So it's already been approved for them to continue. It's an automatic continuance, so there's nothing the board needs to do with that.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear our first old business, which is 22 LSV 14. 15, sorry. 6916 Winona Drive. Variance of development standard of the City of Indianapolis Consolidated Zoning Subdivision Ordinance for the D2 District, Table 744-201-1, to allow an existing mini barn shed located in the front yard setback, 30 feet required, 22 feet provided.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I believe you guys have the pictures, the slides that I submitted. So my name is Stacy Pro. This is my husband, Chris Duckworth.
Mr. Duckworth, nice to meet you.
And we have a shed that you can see the first picture of. And we're asking that the shed stay at its current location. It's a 12-foot by 10-foot shed that is custom built. And it sits 22 feet from the existing right-of-way. This is the edge of the road, 22 feet, not the center of the road. I'm not for sure where City of Indianapolis requires if it's the center of the road or if it's the edge. This is the edge of the road. And it's greater than 10 foot from the side lot line. Shed meets all requirements for the petition, the size, height, and also the shape that is in the City of Lawrence's guidebook. So we feel that we're asking for the variance because we have challenges that are unique to our property. We feel we have undue hardship that's no fault of our own, and it's limited due to the physical conditions of our lot. Our lot from the road to the lake drops 65 feet. It's about 250 feet deep. So as you can imagine, it's a very steep lot. The only flat area we have is where the shed is currently positioned. We don't feel like we're advocating for rights that are superior to our neighbors or those in Indian Lake. In our neighborhood, there are several homes, 5 that I can count off the top of my head, that have sheds in their front yard. Those sheds do not have any landscaping. They don't sit down from the road. There's also a detached garage that's closer than 30 foot from the setback, and then the house across the street from us is about, at most, 20 feet, their garage. So when they back their truck in, it literally is sitting on the edge of the road. So we don't feel our shed is any closer to the road than these other structures that we just mentioned. Indian Lake, you guys, I think, drove through Indian Lake. You're probably familiar with it. It's an old subdivision. It's not a planned cookie cutter neighborhood like Geist, Indian Lake at the Woods, or Woods at Indian Lake. All of those are cookie cutter neighborhoods. If you drive through Indian Lake, I live in a mid-century modern. My neighbor lives in a chalet. The other one lives in a traditional home. There's tri-levels across the street. There's ranches. We all are different. So there's no continuity in what the houses look like. And I think that that's one of the things that builds character to Indian Lake. We also desire to protect the natural beauty of the lake. We feel that the lake's views, both from when somebody is on the lake and also us being able to enjoy the lake, that if we put a shed in the backyard, it will require removal of trees, as well as it just a 10 by 12 shed would block lake views. Our shed is made of quality material. It's custom made. The windows are real windows. It has cedar accent trim. It has 50-year siding. It's painted to match our current house in quality paint. It's painted to match the color and style of our home. Our home is a mid-century modern home. It is similar to other sheds in the neighborhood. Our neighbor next door, if you look at their shed, unfortunately I did not send a picture of it. It actually has the exact same design as ours, which is a sloped roof. Theirs is in the back of their house, which does block lake views. We feel our shed, if you look at the sheds and barns, City of Lawrence, our shed does follow all of the requirements on this sheet. We realize our ignorance of not knowing the code of setback doesn't justify us for violating that code, so we apologize for it, but we didn't do it on purpose. I know at the last meeting, Dr. Joseph felt we violated the rules. We did not do it on purpose. We felt we were following this shed, and it says that sheds that are under 200 square feet don't require a permit, and they just don't put them on an easement area. Also states that the size of the barn, and ours does fit that size. The other thing, we need that shed because while another neighbor had mentioned that we have a 4,000 square foot house, and we do, however, we have the smallest garage, basically, almost, besides for a single car garage, on Indian Lake. We have kids. We have a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old. They have bikes. We live on the lake. We have lake stuff. We have sleds. We have a snowblower. We have lawnmower. We have a lot of stuff. We'd like to be able to park our car in the garage. We've had some crime. Our neighbor, his car was broken into. We also have this gorgeous oak tree that sits over top of our house that is pleasant enough to drop a lot of acorns and a lot of limbs when the wind blows. So we actually have to park our car up into the driveway instead of right in front of our house to avoid damage. We also think that by parking our vehicle in the garage, we'd increase curb appeal. Back to our house, that a neighbor had mentioned that we should have planned for storage. I don't know many people who put a lawnmower, snowblower, kids' bikes, or anything like that inside their home. I don't know where we would put that inside our home. So then on to the second slide, just shows you how our house is set up. Our house does not face the road, Winona. It's actually facing the Joseph's property. So, and as you can see, our shed matches the direction of our home. So I view that, even though the city of Indianapolis views that as a front lot, I view that as my side yard. On to the next slide. So as you can see, there is a narrow pathway between the shed and our house to go to the backyard. That is our only access to the backyard. We have an extensive plumbing problem where currently our plumbing goes underneath the lake. And we have exposed, 20 feet of piping?
About 15 feet.
15 feet, so pray that our sewer does not break. We do have a heat wire around it. It's not buried, it's exposed. City of Lawrence is stating that potentially our only option to fix that is to put a
Lift station.
A lift station. We need access to the side of our house. And unfortunately, you will be able to see another picture of it, and you can kind of tell in that picture, there behind the shed is actually a hill. It's not flat, so it would be difficult if we put the shed closer to our house, it would be difficult for, construction crews to get around, to get to the backyard. Cosmetic appearance. Our house, if you notice, is embedded about 2 feet into the hillside there, which gives it the illusion that is a short house. But our garage peak is actually 14 feet. The height of our shed is 10 foot and some inches. The shed appears like it's bigger than the house because it is sitting in a higher elevation, which goes back to that 65-foot drop from the road down to our house, down to the lake. I feel like if we place that shed closer to the house, it would definitely dwarf the house. There were questions about why the shed looks so tall. It is 10 foot tall in the front, and that's because the back is 8 foot. A lot of slopes have a 6 foot back and an 8 foot top. Well, my husband's had a head injury. He's over 6 foot tall, and he hits his head everywhere and on everything. So that was one thing. The other thing is we have a shelf across the top, basically where you see that cedar accent trim. There's a shelf inside, and that's where we put in the wintertime the kayaks, and in the summertime the winter equipment like the sleds and things like that. So it gives us additional storage and a smaller footprint. And we feel this is the only buildable part on our lot that doesn't require a foundation, doesn't require removal of trees, and protects the natural beauty of the lake. Okay, so, and if you turn to the next, it shows you the width of the walkway, which is about 15 feet.
Yeah.
About 15 feet. The next one is regarding safety. So our shed, the back end of our shed sits roughly 22 feet from the right-of-way, and that's the edge of the road, not the center of the road. We have a flat area of 18 feet, which gives plenty of room. It's the one that you can see the mailbox and 6 night, and it says roughly 22 feet from right-of-way. That's the picture I'm talking about. The back of the shed sits at 22 feet. The front of the shed sits at 24 feet. We were told at the last meeting we only need to be 25 feet because we are a dead-end street, I think is what they said. That flat area that you see is around 18 foot. That allows for a car to say if there's construction, if there's somebody walking, they have plenty of room. The shed does not prevent somebody from getting off of the road if they need to for an emergency. We're on a dead-end street. We're located 3 houses down from the dead end of the street, so there's not a lot of traffic. We also, the shed is 2 to 3 feet down from the right-of-way of the road, which reduces the appearance. And if you go ahead and turn the next page, we have landscaped that shed. So in the front, you see my sign, the 6916, that's about 30 inches?
34.
Yeah, 30 inches tall. We have grass in the back that will grow the height of 5 to 7 feet. When that grass is grown in, that will reduce the appearance of the shed. In the back of the shed, there are yellow arbs. Those grow 5 to 10 feet, and there's also grass around the front of it too, so that we will reduce the appearance of the shed. We also put, on the one prior, you can see we put a 25-foot Autumn Glory maple to help block as well. Next shows our side yard, which is extremely narrow. The widest point of our side yard is about 14 feet. We have trees that go along. They're inside our property line. That prohibits, so there's not anywhere on the side of the house that we can put a shed. The next one is the north side of our house, and that's Dr. Joseph's property. There's, that you see that chalet there. There is not any place to put a shed there. Next thing you see is our backyard. So a couple things. We have erosion issues like a lot of people on Indian Lake. If we remove trees, that bottom picture to the right is where we would have to put a shed, and we would have to remove those trees. Those trees right now are quality control to stop that erosion from continuing to occur. And you can kind of look and see how narrow it is. There's just no place to put it. It would also, I think, hurt the beauty of the lake. You would definitely see the shed from the lake, which would, I think people that are enjoying the lake wouldn't like, because when you're on our lake and you look up, pretty much all of the houses are hidden except for Mr. French's house. Everyone else's houses are difficult to see because of the foliage. We do have other homes right next to us that have large retaining walls that allows for them to have a backyard and a place to put a shed. We do not have a retaining wall. We don't plan to have a retaining wall, and I don't even know if we could have a retaining wall because our yard is so steep. Also, we have a narrow path, so if we did have to put the shed in the backyard, we have a very narrow path to get back there. It would defeat the purpose. The shed is for the lawnmower, the bikes. Our 4-year-old son has autoimmune encephalitis, which manifests as autism, and we don't want anything to encourage him to get anywhere close to the back of the lake. So ultimately, we hope that you grant our variance. guys have any questions? One other thing, last time we were here, the HOA was here and spoke. We didn't talk to you about anything about the HOA because I didn't think you would be interested. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have regarding that if you have interest in knowing. But I feel that's probably for Indian Lake, not for City of Lawrence.
You have one question. You held up like a guideline that you used to the shed. What was that?
It is called Sheds and Barns, City of Lawrence. So last October, when I started to look for getting the shed, I called Shireen's 5-star Shed, and I told her what I wanted, and she laughed and said they don't do that, but she did give me the name of her quality builder that she recommends. And she asked where I lived at, and I said the City of Lawrence, and she said, you guys are a little tricky. So I called, and I was referenced to this site. It's called Sheds and Barns, City of Lawrence. And so we read that and referenced that, and we felt we were okay. Would you like to see it?
Wood, actually.
This is on our website. It's under the how-tos.
Thank you, Renee.
Did make a note to update it so that it includes
Is this not,
setbacks.
Okay.
What's that, Faith? I'm sorry, what was
so
your
is this
question?
not accurate or?
No, it is accurate.
Oh, okay.
It just doesn't include anything about setbacks.
Oh,
I'm going to
I
add that
see.
to it.
So we feel with
So it
that.
didn't have anything on setback.
No, it does not have anything on setbacks currently. That's what it currently is.
Does the board have any questions at this time?
Yes. Hi, good evening. So I think you mentioned a little earlier that some of the neighbors also have sheds in the front of their
They do.
homes, in the front yard, correct?
Uh-huh.
To the best of our knowledge, have those cases come up in front of this body or required any zoning variances?
I have one on the corner of Dakota,
Dakota and Winona.
And Winona.
Choctaw and Winona is how I, yeah.
however you,
Yep.
that's how I
And
say
then
it.
there's
There's one there that we did a variance case on to allow, and that was approved.
I see.
As far as the others, I'm not sure where she's talking, but, I mean,
Okay.
after this, she can get us addresses and we can
We've only
look.
been in Indian like 2.5 years. I'm not for sure how long they've been there.
see.
But if you go and you turn on Indian Lake South Boulevard, it's the third house on the left. There's like a plastic-like shed that comes forward of the house. Over to the right, there's, I know him as the old judge. He has a shed in the front. Van Treese has a shed in the front. He also has a shed in the back that's up against Choctaw. That's 10 feet from the road. It's red. It looks like a barn. His house is yellow. He also parks his cars back there, even though he has a garage in the front. He also has trash cans and stuff like that around it. And then there's the the detached garage that's right up, that sits close to the road, and then our neighbor, his house sits close to the road. So there's multiple
see.
properties that have.
Thank you.
Any other question? Faith, do you have it?
So is it correct then that you relied on this and not get the permit?
Well, I didn't need a permit because it's under 200 square feet.
It was the setback
It was the setback
requirements
that's-
that,
That actually answers a lot of questions. No, I appreciate you bringing it
Yeah,
up.
if you look, there's just one statement that says under 200 square feet. The rest that requires a permit are over 200 square feet.
Or electricity, I think, or something like that.
Okay. That answers a lot of questions. Thank you for bringing that. I don't know, do you guys want to see it? I'm going to hit to Tom and Okay.
thank you, ma'am. Do we have any remonstrators for or against the petition?
I'm Mark Romreich. I'm the president of the Indian Lake HOA. Last time there were some letters read from, of support. Are those not going to be read tonight?
No, we've already read them into the records, so
Okay.
the support and the opposition has already been presented to the board, so this is just a continuation because the notice was defective.
So I shouldn't repeat anything that I've said before?
No, they've already heard it. There's no need to repeat it.
Unless the board wants.
I mean, unless you want to hear it again.
Okay. Well, I do
you
have
have
some
any-
additional comments.
Go right ahead.
That's what we would want to hear
Okay,
tonight.
sure. All right. Let the record show that Marge Crouch is a friend of the petitioner, and that creates the appearance of a conflict of interest for Board Member Tom Crouch. He should recuse himself from this hearing, if he hasn't already.
Mark, we
Why
did
is that? Why is that?
Because your wife is a friend of the,
How long have you been married?
since 92,
I know. How long have you been married?
30 years.
Okay, I've been married 58, and she can make her decisions and I can make mine. And we've been married 58 years because I let her. And I don't think it's up to you to decide in our house what is appropriate and what is not.
It creates the appearance.
Mark.
We've-
Okay,
I'll leave it at that.
I discussed, I actually forwarded your email to our city attorney and we had a discussion internally, and we find no reason that Mr. Crouch should recuse himself from this petition.
That's fine.
Just because his
All I
wife is
can
a friend
do
with
is
a petitioner.
Tell you that
The law specifically says he would have to have financial gain in order to not be objective. It's about a financial gain. There's no financial compensation being made here by Marge or Mr. Crouch. So there's no reason for him to recuse himself.
Okay. The letters of support that were read into the record at the previous hearing are from residents who live nowhere close to the subject property, and so they should be considered accordingly. Now, in matters such as this, the Indian Lake Board weighs the views of next door or nearby neighbors more heavily than those of distant neighbors. In this case, 2 remonstrators are next door neighbors, a third is 2 doors down, and a fourth is on the same street. So I hope that the BZA weighs the impact to and opinions of nearby neighbors more heavily in its decision-making process. Okay, so I won't repeat what I said last time. This is new. As I understand Indiana law, the need for a variance must arise from some condition peculiar to the property involved, and such condition is not due to the general conditions of the neighborhood. The conditions cited by the petitioner, steep backyards, small front yards, are common to Winona Drive and are not unique to the petitioner. Nearby examples include 6901, 6911, 6930, 6920, 6910, 6908, and 6902 Winona Drive. None of those lots have front yard sheds. Testimony by the petitioner about difficulties with alternate shed locations in their yard doesn't change the fact that the very small front yard of this property is an inappropriate location for a shed, let alone one so close to the street where it poses a detriment to neighbors in the neighborhood. If any of the board members are thinking that the shed is already built, it's only 3 feet out of compliance, let's just approve this. This only encourages the better to ask forgiveness than permission mentality that got us into this mess in the first place.
Is that how
As
you think we
evidence,
think? Is that how you think we think?
I said if any of the board members are thinking that. I don't know how you think. As evidence, the petitioner continued working on the shed and landscaping around it, even after receiving a letter from the HOA to remove it. So the Indian Lake Homeowners Association asks the BZA to deny this variance request. Thank you.
Board have any questions for the HOA?
I have a question. Does your homeowners association ban sheds?
No, it doesn't. It allows them, but they need to be approved by the board.
By the HOA board? Is that what you mean? Approved by the HOA board? The sheds have to be?
Yes, the HOA board.
also the board.
Yeah, I'm sorry, boards.
So, pardon me, with the other homes that have sheds in the front of their yards, were those opposed by the HOA? Were those,
The HOA revised its covenants a year ago, so prior to that revision, sheds did not need, the design of the shed did not need to be approved by the board, so that's a change. But that change came before, that change was in effect when this shed was constructed.
but dealing with the design of the shed, not necessarily the location?
So prior to a year ago, sheds were allowed, and the board, there was no approval process by the Indian Lake Board.
Same.
Approximately a year ago, the covenants of the Indian Lake Association were changed, requiring Indian Lake Board approval of any designs of homes, fences, sheds.
See.
But we're not an architectural board. We're an encroachment board. We're dealing with 3 foot. And the sheds that Trace is talking about were also encroaching when it had nothing to do with architectural standards. It had to do with encroachment. And that encroachment, which we're dealing with, you never came, or the association never came to deal with. Isn't that correct?
To this body?
Are you saying prior to a year ago?
Yeah.
Prior to a year ago, sheds were not require board approval. Indian Lake Board.
But that's architectural approval.
Not required.
We're not dealing with architectural approval tonight. We're dealing with encroachment. Will the 3 feet encroachment cause dangers to cars driving down the road? Or the typical thing is encroachment affects the sewers that are laid in the road. So, but that is exactly what we're dealing with, is encroachment, not architectural design.
No, I appreciate that. Had the plans that, well, had the petitioner presented plans to the board for a shed that meets the setbacks, I don't know if the board would have approved those or not. The Indian Lake Board would have approved that design or not. The Indian Lake Board did not approve the shed as built. So if this board says you got to move it 3 feet, the next step for the Indian Lake Board is to ask whether we're going to approve that or not. And I can't tell you what the board will decide.
But you're here to remonstrate against the location.
That's correct.
So the one thing that I'm not hearing, and I know you think that we're maybe some mindless pushovers who are just going to approve a shed because it's already there. We're not. What I haven't heard and what I'd like to hear is, how does this injure the public health and safety? How is this like detracting from the value of the neighbors? And that's what I'm not hearing. Like, I get it that all the neighbors don't like the shed, but nothing that's being said is very helpful to our decision tonight.
I don't think it affects the public health, whether it affects public safety. There have been some conversations about emergency access, but I'm not prepared to claim that. And maybe I had a misunderstanding about this process, but I didn't think that the only issues of interest to this board were public health and safety when a variance was being discussed. If it is,
I
then
mean,
There's 5 criteria.
yeah.
And
what are the others?
Well, I mean, as far as the homeowners association, I would assume that you'd have some information on like property values, or how is it going to?
Yeah, I can tell you why.
So the 5 criteria for approval of any petition for a variance of development standards, they're all the same. Number 1 is the grant will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Number 2 is use or value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty in the use of the property. Those are the 3 for a variance of development standards. If it were a variance of use, there's 5.
Yeah.
So,
I'm hearing erosion and the shed's going to fall into the lake if they put it in the backyard. And I think that that's pretty significant.
well,
And I've not heard anything as significant from you.
it's the second one, which is property value. You know, the nearby neighbors believe, and the board does, the Indian Lake Board does also, that this would adversely affect the property values of the adjacent homes.
How?
Do you have proof of that?
Right, that's what we would like to know. I
Oh.
mean, how much are they going to drop?
I don't know how you
So
would
the
prove
shed.
that. I guess I don't have proof of that. It's a perception by the neighbors, you know, so.
I mean, and because let's imagine for example, that they removed the shed, now there's a hole in the front yard. Is that better for property values? I mean, do you want the shed shortened? Do you want it moved closer? I mean, I don't know. The information that I need is not being presented to me, and so that's why I'm trying to ask more questions.
Well, I know you've heard some testimony to the contrary, but I believe that that shed could be located in the backyard without it being detrimental to the neighbors. You know, the arguments of that would destroy the view of the property from the lake. You know, I don't feel that. You know, and we have others. Mr. Teston has a similar sloped backyard, and his shed is in the back of the house. So,
You have small children, though?
well, he did.
But you see, I mean,
He did when it was built.
The thing is, what we're looking at is what unique factors would make us want to approve this shed, and they gave us a lot. And so I'm just not hearing anything very strongly against it for our purpose. I mean, you can do whatever you want with the HOA, but for our purposes, you know, the criteria, I'm not getting a lot of information from you on the criteria we're actually looking at.
Okay. Well, I did not come with evidence that could prove adverse property value.
It would seem like improvements to the property would actually increase property value. Generally, you know, I'm not a realtor either, but generally that's how it works.
So would you be not here if the shed moved 3 foot?
Well, they wouldn't need a variance.
Yeah.
They wouldn't need a variance, so
Understand that question?
None of us would be here.
if it met the setback requirements, they wouldn't be in front of us.
Right,
So we're talking
You know, you're right.
correct.
Wouldn't be a case in front
All
of us.
right, I'm ready, yeah. Do we have any?
Okay. Any other questions for the HOA?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. You'll have,
We'll get a chance. And the administrator's time's up.
yeah. Anybody else for or against the petition? It has to be short because I forgot at the beginning of the meeting, each petitioner and remonstrators have 10 minutes each. But since this was not told at the beginning of the meeting, so you need,
Make it quick.
yeah.
Will be very brief.
You need your name
I'm
and
Dr.
your,
Richard Ergo. I live 2 doors down. I walk out, see the shed, I have no problem with it. It's a nice-looking shed. They don't have any place else to put it. They just don't.
I'm sorry, speak up. I didn't hear the last sentence.
They don't have any place else to put their shed. So I have no problem with it at all. I don't think it's ugly. I don't think it's intrusive. It's at the end of a dead-end street. They're 3 houses down. I walk out and I can see it. Not ugly. intrusive. Okay?
Thank you.
Let me ask one question. Do you feel that your,
Doctor, sir?
do you feel that your property value is going to decrease or increase?
Absolutely not.
Or
Either
stay
way.
neutral?
Either way. They have done nothing but improve their property, as I have. I bought it 5 years ago. I put $170,000 into my property. They have done very similar, if not more. They have nothing but the idea, as I did, to improve their property.
Okay,
Nothing but.
Thank you.
thank you.
We'll hear from the city of Lawrence. Renee?
Dan's here.
Oh, Dan, I'm sorry.
There's posts there.
Son, we're honored, Dan.
Rebecca.
Uh-oh, Rebecca.
Sorry. Dan Zerner with the City of Lawrence. I know this is a tough one for everybody. I sure wouldn't want to be in your shoes. But I will say that the city would not have recommended approval if it had come to us initially before it was ever built, because it wasn't within the standards. And you've heard a lot of emotional testimony tonight, and a lot of good reasons for and against. But it's done now. I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I will say that I think that this board does a really good job of weighing facts and how the facts affect each individual case. I don't think it matters what the precedent is before that the neighbor next to it has done, or what the neighbor did 3 years ago. The goal of this board is to protect this city and enhance it as we go forward. And I think you do a good job of that. So I don't know how to say that. Sheree and I looked at this. We found it to be really a tough case. You know, normally I'm not afraid to make a statement for or against. As I say, we would have denied it initially. I don't know what's right at this point in time, and I don't know what else to say. Take your questions if you have
Yeah, I
any.
have a question, Dan. Is the sewer that they're going down to the lake, is the city considering a grinder for them on the downhill side of the
I
their
don't
property?
know that answer. I can't speak to that, Tom. I just can't speak to that.
It just seems like if we would move the shed 3 foot, it may impair your ability to get around their house and work on the
Now,
ground.
what I don't know is, I would suspect, but I do not know this, and don't want to put it in anybody's mind, but I would suspect the shed is sitting on a utility easement because it's right next to the road. But I don't know that, and the truth of the matter is, if the city ever did have to get to there, it's not the city's fault. It would be their loss if we had to pull that shed for utility services. So right now, that doesn't worry me. It is kind of isolated back there. It does sit near the end of the street, and it is a beautiful shed. So that one thing I know is we're going to leave here tonight, and whatever you decide, it's not going to affect the rest of the city much, or at this point in time. So we have bigger fish to fry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Dan?
No.
Petitioner, you get a 5-minute rebuttal.
I just want to mention, unfortunately, we did have an emergency at our street. Our neighbor's wife had an emergency on the lake, and we had 2 ambulances, 5 police cars, 2
Fire truck.
2 fire trucks.
At least one, I don't know.
And one of them went into our yard, which was perfectly fine. They had plenty of room to get around. So I don't feel that where our shed is located at, they wouldn't have been able to get to where our shed is at anyway. They would have went over our little embankment. But they were able to back up into our driveway, and then drove through our yard and pulled out. There was plenty of room, because like I said, we have that 18-foot. We've also put the geogrid down, so the grass grows through, but you can park there. We use that for extra parking, or we will once the grass is established. And that's around widening our mailbox, next to our driveway and up by the street. The other thing is, Mark mentioned that our lot is similar to other people's lots, and I disagree with that. Mr. Teston, who's here, his lot is very wide. They have plenty of room to put sheds on the side. Other lots are wide. They can put their sheds on the side as well. Ours, as I showed you, we don't have the north side at all. Our house is basically built on the property line, as well as the Josephs. And then, I mean, we can hear each other talking inside our homes. And then the other side, we just have the 14-foot wide, there's nowhere to put it on the side. So it's either in the front or it's in the back. As to property value, when we bought our house, it was a dump. Our friends asked why we bought a meth house. We have spent thousands of dollars making it look beautiful. I would have not done anything, so I think it would be really difficult to find a realtor that would say that that we've hurt our property value or our neighbor's property value, because we've done nothing but improve that property. And then the other thing, I don't know if this matters, and I probably shouldn't mention it, but Mark Rumrick is good friends with my two neighbors. He said that his girls grew up with Dr. Joseph's girls. They've all been on the lake for over 20 years, so he probably should recuse himself from the HOA. And that's all I got to say. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Vermont Strader, a 5-minute rebuttal.
Hi, my name is Amy Forbush. I live about a block and a half away from this street. We walk our dogs there every day, about twice a day. I'm familiar with the house before they bought it. I'm familiar with the house after they bought it. I'm familiar with the shed and all the drama that's happened around it. I'm also an architect. I work mostly in residential design. I'm familiar with the process as it's supposed to unfold and how you're supposed to go about the process properly. There is a lot of emotion about this. There's a lot of things that are said that kind of like bury the real point here, is that I know that they are improving the house, and I would totally agree. They've done a lot of wonderful things to their house. The shed is a little bit of a outlier for me in terms of why they did what they did, and you've explained it, and I understand all that. The bottom line is it's non-compliant. It does not comply with the rules. And that little cheat sheet, it says, here's what you have to do if you want a shed, but it says inherently in that, it doesn't mean all the rest of the rules that are part of the ordinance can be violated. And when you found out that the rules were violated or that it was non-compliant, what did you do? Did you move the shed? Did you move it? Did you talk to the neighbors? Did you come to the hearing and say, look, I want to make this better. I want everyone to be okay with that. I don't think the shed is inherently ugly. I don't think the house is in bad condition. I just don't think it's right that you can put it right in the middle of your front yard where neighbors on either side have a problem with it. It's like sometimes I look at it and say, what's the spirit and intent of this law? And this rule that we have, this setback, is what if everybody did it? What if everybody put a big shed in their front yard despite the setback requirements that are in place? We put those rules in place because not everyone does the right thing, and these are things that help people make those decisions, and it helps you make those decisions. As an architect, the first thing I do is I look at what all those rules are and I try to solve the problem that they have, the storage problem. I can solve your problem without that shed. I know I can. I feel like there's a better solution, and if people have a problem with it, as a board, I hope you'll listen, because there's a lot of people that do have a problem, and those people are most affected by this. I don't know how you provide proof that it's affecting property values, but it's a big shed, and if you're not sure, go visit. Go visit, go walk down the street and tell me that it's not a little obtrusive. I hope you will look at it. I hope you will think thoroughly about it. I don't think they went to go to do it and hurt people's feelings, but now it's been done, and I think we need to find a better solution than just saying, hey, yeah, that's okay.
Thank you. The board ready to vote? Any questions? The board is now going to vote on 22 LSV 15, 6916 Winona Drive, variance of development standard of the City of Indianapolis Consolidated Zoning Subdivision Ordinance for the D2 District, Table 744-201-1, to allow an existing mini barn shed located in the front yard setback, 30 feet required, 22 feet provided. The vote is 4 to grant and 1 to deny. The the variance has been granted. The board now will hear 22 LUSV 18, 4403, 4411, 4421, and 4429 North Franklin Road, variance of use of table 743-1 to allow construction of a new car facility on 4 parcels, one of which is Zone C5 and the other 3 are Zone 3C3, not permitted in a C3. In addition, a development of standard Chapter 743, Article 3, Section 06, drive-through stacking spaces located in front yard of Franklin Road. Stacking spaces permitted in front yards along rights-of-ways in excess of 30 feet. Hello.
Hello. I guess I did get sworn in earlier. Good evening, Chairperson Lytle, members of the board. Joe Calderon, I'm an attorney here in Indianapolis at 11 South Meridian. It's a pleasure to be back before this board again, especially during holiday season, and we think we have an exciting project to propose to you tonight on behalf of Crew Car Wash. With me tonight, in case you have any questions, are Catherine Rayner and Travis Smith from Crew, and our civil engineer from Kimley Horn, Mike Timko. So as your chairperson read into the record, this is a 2-part variance. The first part relates to a variance of use, but not for the whole property. And I'll explain that. Each of you should have a booklet. And I'm not going to really belabor the point. I'm sure you're all familiar with the little grocery store and restaurant at the northeast corner of Pendleton Pike and Franklin, which is proposed to be redeveloped. If you turn to tab 2, you can kind of see the zoning map outlined, and you can see the C5 line applies to the 4403 property. That zoning's perfectly fine for car washes and a whole variety of things, including car lots for that matter. And if you jump just to the north, and you can kind of see the 3 parcels, 4411, 4421, 4429, are all zone C3, which is commercial. It's just for other retail. That's what we are requesting the variance of use from. All told, all 4 parcels are only 1.34 acres, so it's not a gigantic site. And frankly, the 3 parcels that are standalone, 4411 through 4429, are so small that it would be very difficult to develop anything in the commercial arena. So their job, basically, those 3 parcels combined with 4403 is what makes the parcel desirable for development. And you can see that kind of manifested if you turn to tab 4. The second page of that is a colored overlay of the site plan. And you can see the pink, which is to the bottom, or the south side of the property, is 4403, and you can see the green, which is the C3. And so we're really talking about a smaller portion of the lot being proposed to be used. And you can see the building improvement and the car wash features are really oriented in the existing C5. You have some stacking area, some vacuum area, and what we call incidental improvements that are in the C3. So this is what you're really looking at in terms of what fits on the C5 and what fits on the C3. And as you can see, the C3 is kind of the accessory portion of this car wash. If you don't like the color map, you can kind of see how it lays out on the first page of tab 4 with the layout showing how cars would come in off of Franklin Road to stack. There's also entry exit off Pendleton Pike, and how it all fits in. So the majority of the improvements are on the C5, which is permissible for a car wash, including the entire building. The other variance that we're seeking from you tonight relates to the location of those stacking spaces. And in 2016, when Indianapolis rewrote the zoning ordinance, they put in a provision that essentially says, well, you can't have stacking spaces in between a building and a street. Fine, except that when you have frontage on two streets, you have two front yards, and therein kind of drives what we call the practical difficulty in trying to configure a site like this with a drive-through, which is permitted. And we just can't do it without having some frontage on the street. So we do think that there is a practical difficulty just in the way that we have frontage on two streets and the length of the building, of the parcel, to fit everything in and get customers to flow appropriately. We are asking for consideration to allow that stacking to be located along the Franklin Road frontage. Now, one thing we will do to kind of mitigate that, and if you know the site, it's all hard surface. There's really no landscaping. If you turn to tab 5, you can see that we are implementing pretty robust landscaping along both the corner, which needs it, at Pendleton Pike and Franklin, as well as along the frontage of Franklin Road. So a lot of that stacking will be softened by the implementation of this landscaping. That's one of the things that we try to do, in terms of addressing a variant situation, is how do we mitigate it? How do we soften that? So that is our idea in this case. If you turn to tab 6, I think you'll see the Crew prototype building, heavily bricked. Of course, they have their trade dress colors, but we hope you like the elevations. I know that the administration of the city has seen the project. They like it. We're excited to bring this project to Lawrence, and we hope that we have sufficiently laid out our cases for both the variance of use and development standards. I had tendered findings of fact when I filed the petition, and we appreciate the city's report and support of this. And with that, we're here to answer any questions that you may have as board members. Thank you.
Joe, when somebody's coming south on Franklin, will there be a blister, or how will they cut across traffic to get into your stacking line on Franklin Road going south?
They're going southbound, so they're turning left in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to ask Mike Timko to come to the podium because he's the civil. He may or may, hopefully he has an answer, but it's a fair question.
Good evening. My name is Mike Timko with Kimley Horn & Associates, 250 East 96th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. So it's a little faint to see, but in one of the site plans, we did include an aerial view, so you should be able to see the road, and I know it's not easy to see. So really, the left turn lane, as you approach Pendleton Pike, begins to taper where our entrance is. So there wouldn't be, as the street exists today, a full width lane, but there would be a substantial amount there already, so that cars would be able to get around them pretty easily.
So a warm winter day, we won't have Franklin Road backed up to the railroad track.
Right, and the good thing here is it looks like Franklin Road is potentially already 2 lanes at that point southbound, or if it's not, there would be room for it. So there's always going to be an open lane for somebody to get around.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my question is, I've got one right down here at 56 and Pendleton Pike, and now you got one at Franklin Road. I mean, aren't they kind of too close together?
Well, those are obviously business decisions that they are going to make in terms of deciding where traffic is. Are they overloaded at 56th Street and having capacity issues? Those are all reasons that drive these decisions. they wouldn't be in a position to really wisely invest the several $1 million that it takes to do one of these projects without being pretty mindful of the ability to support this location and the other location. I don't know if Catherine wants to say anything about that, or Travis, or not.
Yeah, to answer your question.
Probably have to come up to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Travis Smith with Crew Car Wash. To answer your question, yeah, it's really the density of the traffic and the population in that area. A request we get very frequently from the customers that use the existing store and the employees that use the existing store is to increase the capacity at that location, but there really isn't a way to do it. So instead of doing that, we thought a beneficial solution would be to go on the opposite side of the street a little bit further away, serve some community members that are a little further away from the existing store, and that way they can kind of work together.
So I don't have to drive so far.
Well, I don't know about you, but I have a pass also.
Oh, I do too.
And I'm there daily. I can't tell you how many times on a Saturday or a Sunday, I will not go get my Jeep washed because people are stacked on Pendleton Pike. And you're going 45, 50, 55, 60 miles an hour down that road, and you come to that light and you are slamming on your brakes, and it's just a matter of time if we haven't already had somebody get hurt really badly there. So I've personally not gone because they're stacked on Pendleton Pike.
Starbucks when we got excited.
It is.
Because, yeah, I mean, you
got excited about
there's so much
Starbucks
demand.
car
We
wash
actually
now.
approved a second Starbucks, and one of the things we considered is that there's so much traffic.
Yes.
So if you have a second option. I have a question, though. I don't know, is your question already answered?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a question, because I'm looking at, what is this, on tab 5, and we have the blueprint. Are you guys doing curb cuts? Are you putting in sidewalks, or what's the plan? Because I know people walk that area.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so a lot of the curb cuts that are going to be utilized are actually existing curb cuts today. So we're trying to line those up as best we can. But then there also would be frontage sidewalk included as a part of this as well.
There will be side, okay. Yeah, because I see like the little dotted lines, and I was little
Oh, sure.
tiny legend, and I
Sure.
couldn't figure out if
Yep.
that was,
That's good.
but yeah, I know people.
That's going to help.
People do walk that area, and sometimes they're in the street because, well, for a variety of reasons, but, so that was one of my questions. Curb cuts you are gonna make, is that on the Pendleton Pike side or the Franklin side?
Franklin.
So there will actually be both. So there will still be one curb cut on Pendleton Pike. And that's located in such a way that cars will have free-flowing traffic to go to the north end of the property. And again, that's intentional to make sure that there's a long lane before they get into any stacking. So that was very intentional. And then the primary curb cut on Franklin is at the very north end of the site, so you're further away from the intersection. And then again, same theory, you're maximizing your length from where folks enter the car wash to where that entry is, so that we're minimizing any potential of stacking out into the right-of-way.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
It looks like there's one house in proximity to this. Your hours are, what, roughly 7 in the morning till 8 at night or something?
That's correct, 7 to 8.
And, but there's not a light problem. I'm just asking, is there any reason that would bother a neighbor?
It would be our goal that it wouldn't. I mean, we'll have a lighting plan that there's no spillage onto their property, and there will be a landscaping buffer in between.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
One other thing to note, Mr. Crouch, is that there are some legacy residential properties on Franklin. Those are all actually zoned commercial. So someday, perhaps, the house will be occupied for commercial use, you know, whatever it might be, a bakery, a law office, insurance office, something like that, or torn down and potentially redeveloped on that side of the street.
Yeah, I
But fair
noticed-
question. We don't want to disrespect anybody that is living in what we would call a grandfathered home.
Appreciate that, thank you.
I was just going to piggyback off that. You're not going to mess with their water pressure, are you?
No, we have to tap into the bank.
That was my attempt at humor. That was my attempt at zoning humor. I'm so sorry.
Not very many good zoning jokes out there.
About the guy's shower.
Okay.
Get your shower in, right?
I had a quick question on the landscaping. You got a very nice plan here. Have you considered, or would you consider, native plants? Because we are going to a monarch city with the butterfly gardens throughout our city parks. And I just didn't know if you consider that in your planning.
Don't forget the buffering.
Yeah.
You really need buffering.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with it, but if it's an option in any of these areas, if native plants could be used.
And I think that's something we can work through with staff, should this be approved, to work with them to make sure we're doing what we can on that front.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I was just going to say, you mentioned showers. We were on a bike trip once where a cow let go out of a cow truck on a bicycle.
Oh.
And we ran him through the car wash. What are you going to do with a guy in that kind of trouble?
Any other questions?
No.
I don't know if he paid or not.
That should be a compliment.
We are just,
We're just full of it tonight.
we're having a stand-up show. Tell you what.
Saturday Night Live?
Holiday time.
The
Right.
pre-Christmas zoning show.
Too much sugar today.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any remonstrators for or against this petition? We're here from the city of Lawrence. Dan?
Chairperson Lytle, get that right?
It's okay.
Rebecca.
Well, this is one I'm happy to talk about, and unfortunately, we haven't had the chance with this board, like we have with so many, to bring the Trades District to you. The Trades District project, most of you have heard a little bit about. I want to remind you that it goes a half a block east of Franklin Road, so this project is squarely in the middle of the Trades District. Regarding all the houses you asked about, Mr. Crouch, to my knowledge, the only residential property is one across the street to the west of Franklin. The rest of that's now all been purchased by Amerifence or somebody else for commercial development. I'd also like to remind you that the new firehouse is immediately north of this, where we're spending about $10 million of the city's money. I view the fact that they're building another crew car wash complementary to the entire project, in that the volume there is so heavy along Pendleton Pike that it shows and validates our project. Additionally, I think all of you are aware that Pendleton Pike starting this summer will become all medians all the way through, all the way out to Oak Landon, and there'll be, we've committed for those to be landscape medians. So we're going to totally start changing the face of Lawrence this year as a gateway coming from 465. And I have enough respect for Crew that I believe to have them there, the Frigi project, the new racetrack is taking an entire block. There has been a petition that Renee are working on for a new strip mall across the road from this development. So it's all starting to explode. And I think that I've always noticed that Crew is kind of like Chick-fil-A. Wherever they locate, good things happen around them. So I would strongly encourage this board to approve this petition. And I want to remind you that the reason they're in this position is that through my influence with the RDC made those 3 properties available to spur this particular type of development. And we've had 3 or 4 opportunities, but Crew's the one that's landed on it. And the RDC is extremely excited about this and ready to close on the property. So with that, we would very much appreciate your consideration of approving this request.
Thank you.
Mr. Zerner, I have a comment and a question for a couple of questions. First of all, I appreciate the comment, and it sounds like the commitment for sidewalks.
Yes, sir.
There are indeed a lot of people who walk that part of our city. Lots of parts of our city, there's foot traffic. And I also think it's important from a future planning standpoint to consider multimodal ways of transportation. So kudos to that.
So I would encourage you at some point just to call me and make an appointment. and come up and we'll show you the new roads.
I love it.
And by the way, the new Record Street project will dump out just about 100 yards at the most to the north of this process across the street, which will be the whole new corridor through the center that includes a roundabout, 40 foot of pavement. There's a tremendous amount of stuff going to happen. It has a nice big sidewalk and bike path along it.
Well, perfect segue to my first question, which I think you just answered actually, was to ask if you feel positive about this project and how it shakes hands with future development up and down
I think it actually,
road, and I think I hear
I think it actually sets the example with the landscape and the sidewalks and using the curbs that are there. And quite frankly, that has been an eyesore for this city ever since I've been here. The number of times we've had to go out and clean brush and debris, and it doesn't matter how fast you clean it, it just blows right back in there. So to have a respected group like this take that charge of that corner and help us spur that development, it just adds to what we're trying to do.
And then last question, I think the answer here is yes, but I just wanted to circle back and ask the site layout and the traffic considerations up and down Pendleton Pike, up and down Franklin Road. You feel good from a safety standpoint and a traffic flow standpoint?
I absolutely do. I do believe that within the next 10 years, depending on how the city progresses with the various people in charge and those sorts of things, I do think we'll see Franklin Road totally redeveloped and improved all the way to the north. I will remind you that we tried to do that before I came here about 4 years ago, and we couldn't get the property acquired. But I think with all the other things that we have going on now, there's enough movement that would happen. And I believe Franklin Road, in fact, I was in a meeting, I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but I was in a meeting today I was privileged to where it was discussed at what point are we going to blow Franklin Road out and make those improvements that we talked about 5 or 6 years ago.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Let's get a grocery store in there.
Pardon?
Please. We do need a grocery store.
Losing Marsh was a big
We all understand that. And
off topic.
There is a grocery store coming in the Marsh Strip. I'm reviewing plans for it now. Yes.
I will say that that's sort of a chicken and egg thing. And one of the reasons that I don't think we've had a grocery store is that the Pendleton Pike has not looked any different than it did in the 1950s. And even though the traffic is magnificent, for somebody to come and invest the $40, $50 million for a major grocery store has just not been appealing. I think with the changes that we're starting to see now, I think the new landscape medians, I think the improvement of the Purple Line coming up through on Post Road, you may or may not be aware, but we only have one parcel left in the entire fort to sell. That's it. And we're fully developed. So Pendleton Pike, Post Road, Franklin, they're the next frontier, and I think we've already started that with the Trades District stuff moving from 465.
All right, very nice.
There's also, he hasn't mentioned it, if you go to the city's website under economic development, there is a really nice PowerPoint presentation about the Trades District and what his plans are for it. For the
You get to chooselawrence.com is the website, chooselawrence.com, and you can see that whole
I've seen it. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner, 5 more minutes.
Renee,
Oh, I'm sorry. Maria's on.
Maria?
may I ask a question about the Crew Car Wash petition, please?
Yes.
I was wondering, with the existing Crew Car Wash at Pendleton Pike and 52nd Street on that corner piece, what I found over the years is that because the drainage on the cars from the water, that during the winter months, there's a lot of ice that occurs on 52nd Street when they exit that area. And then what results from that is deterioration of that surface right-of-way. And so I was wondering if we're going to put in another Crew Car Wash, which I don't see a problem with that necessarily, but is there any way that they can mitigate that drainage of that water that will not only not affect sidewalk, because we do have a lot of pedestrian traffic at that particular location, but also the vehicular transportation on both of those right-of-ways and how they might mitigate that. And the second question is, how is this going to conform or not conform with the NDOT new plans along Pendleton Pike? Will there be any interaction with that, or how will that become engaged with this project overall? Thank you.
So to my understanding, as we've looked at this, it will not be influenced one way or another regarding the NDOT plans because they're using the existing cuts, and that's all already been predetermined.
Thank you, Dan. Bear with us, Counselor. We have a representative coming up to answer your other question.
So this is Mike Timko with Kimley Horn, ready to speak to the question about the drainage in particular. So Crew's actually made some advancement, and what we typically do now is there is a portion as you're exiting the Crew car wash tunnel that's actually a heated concrete pad, and they've actually now got drains as you're exiting there to help promote additional drainage. The other thing I would point out is just given the way that this site plan's oriented, there's a decent amount of drive length from the exit of the tunnel to the public right-of-way. And obviously, we're going to be doing what we need to do from a general stormwater drainage perspective to make sure that the site is draining and being captured and detained as it's required to by code.
Marie, did they answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else to add?
I don't think we have any other comments. Thank you for your time tonight. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Board ready to vote? Do we have to do two, or is it all in one?
It's all in one.
Okay. 22 LUSV 18, 4403, 4411, 4421, and 4429. A variance of use of table 743-1 to allow construction of a new car wash facility on 4 parcels, one of which is zone C5, and the other 3 are zone C3, not permitted. In addition, development standards of Chapter 743, Article 3, Section 06-I, drive-through stacking spaces located in front yard of Franklin Road, and stacking spaces prohibited in front yards along right-of-ways in excess of 30 feet. Unanimous?
Yes.
The board has unanimously granted your petition.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Second Crew car wash. The board now will hear 22 USV 19, 7300 East 56th Street, variance of sign ordinance, table 744-906-12D, allow a monument sign that is 12 foot tall by 10 foot wide, 5 feet maximum height permitted, and table 744-906-12G to allow a 40 square foot digital display not permitted in an SU district.
Thank you, and good evening again, board members. Joe Calderon, 11 South Meridian, Indianapolis, representing MSD of Lawrence Township. Roger Smith, the Director of Operations, who many of you know, is with me tonight. This is kind of the finishing touch, if you will, to the Lawrence Central High School improvement plan that's been ongoing for the last couple of years. There is a consistent sign program.
Can someone close the door? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Joe. Pardon me.
It's okay. I'll wait. I don't want anybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the school district has been implementing a professionally designed sign program probably since 2018, I think, is when we started the first one. So there obviously are a lot of schools within the district, and they've been implemented as part of renovation plans. So Lawrence Central's on its finishing touches. And we are proposing the same type of sign that we've implemented at other schools. Now, I know for a fact that the old red sign was not everybody's favorite sign on 56th Street. I wasn't around for that one, but I sure heard about it. But the good news is that signs like that have evolved greatly. And it's very important from my perspective as having represented this school district and others on sign programs, just to emphasize the importance of the amount of information that a school district has to convey almost on an on-time, on-delivery type basis, on-demand basis. And that kind of drives these signs. I remember when I was a kid and went to Washington Township schools, our 8th grade class saved money all year to buy a manual reader board sign for the junior high that I was going to. And literally, you'd have to go out, and they'd send a kid out, believe it or not, to change those signs with those steel things. Those are just
You're dating yourself.
not safe. Yeah, I am.
And the
I'm
rest
proud
of
of
us.
that.
Yeah,
actually.
we all remember.
Right? So,
I don't remember.
Well, Faith don't.
thank goodness.
Just
because she's a baby.
Anyway, so what's happened is that actually the ordinance allows for these signs in many districts, but for some reason, and I wasn't on the sign revision committee this go-around, they have not incorporated permission to have these signs in two of the biggest users, and that's schools and churches. And you see them everywhere. So there's tons of variances out there to allow for these signs. So the key thing is, in my experience, is really twofold. Are they located in an appropriate location to where they're not going to be distracting for drivers? And two, are they going to be managed operationally? Because they're all programmed now. And so that at critical times of the day, rush hour, that you're not going to have 5 messages and do a gooseneck kind of thing. Are they going to be turned off at night if you're near a residential area? And are they not going to do the crazy, flashy Times Square blinking and all that? So what we've done is really provided, I think, a very good location for this sign. This is, if you turn to tabs 2 first, you can kind of get a picture of where it is if you stand back about 10,000 feet up in the air and you look down. You can see the sign is sufficiently separated from Kaido Drive and is in the front. So they're really not interfering with traffic on the school grounds itself, and certainly it meets all setbacks. The great thing is, and if you turn to tab 3, and it's still hard to see, we try to blow this up a little bit, but there's 468 feet from this sign all the way to the edge of Kaido Drive. So there's sufficient separation, and we think the message gives everybody plenty opportunity. If you're going to see a message and you need to turn on Kaido Drive, you can do so in a safe manner. You can see the aesthetics of the sign in tab 4. Again, this is consistent throughout the district. The majority of the sign is not digital display. The digital display is set in the middle. It's only 40 square feet, which is very small for that type of sign. You can see it's encased in brick and aluminum. So it's a very handsome thematic sign that is consistent throughout the district. And then finally, if you'll turn to tab 5, you can see that we put on voluntarily commitments that not only address the issues that I discussed in terms of how fast a sign can change, scrolling, blinking, flashing, static message during rush hour in the morning and evening, turning it off overnight, dimming the level of brightness that it's on at night after the sun goes down, and then just as importantly, kind of keeping the variance in-house to the school district. So this document was actually prepared before I got the city report. In talking with Roger Smith, we're happy to amend our commitments to match the city report, which essentially the same, a couple of tweaks, but we'll make those. We hope that you as a board are pleased with the way Lawrence Central is turning out, and that this sign can be a nice complementary piece to it. We appreciate your time and are happy to answer any questions.
I want to say thank you for having the
Been
commitments.
waiting for that.
I have been waiting for this for a long time. I just didn't care for the brightness. I'm sorry.
That sign was the reason all these commitments became a reality.
Yeah. I think there may have been one other one in another district that kind of had the same
Yeah.
concerns expressed by other boards. But I think I know which one that was too, so.
But yeah, they've met all of it. Instead of remain static for 30 seconds, and the commitments we have on every other one is 6 seconds. So they've gone one above, so. Any questions?
Were those commitments,
I was like, what's the difference between what's the main difference? They seem about the same.
The
They're
hours.
just in a different order.
Yeah. It's
That's all.
virtually the same.
That's what we were just
That's what we were
doing,
doing, sitting here checking off.
making sure that they were all on there.
It's like when they put the two pictures and it's like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's a rock.
so
but
Becky, were those suggestions offered by the client? Were they requested by the city? Or is it a meeting of the minds?
So Joe has done enough sign variances that he knows that any electronic variable message sign is going to have to meet those 7 requirements. And so he's good enough. He just puts them in there automatically because he knows we won't consider it without him.
But every digital sign in Lawrence has the same commitments.
Yes.
Yeah.
The same
Ever since the
hours
first time
off.
we approved this one back in 2018, right? Right after that, these commitments went in.
And the location of this sign, I know the complete front of the building obviously has changed, but I can't remember where that was in relationship to the length of that
change the front of
block.
Yeah.
Where's the location of the new sign versus where the old one?
Oh, it's a little bit to the west, but I'll let Roger answer that.
They're like right by the turn-in of Belzer or?
No, it's actually
farther
towards
away.
Cato Drive, where the building kind of juts out
Yeah.
on the west side.
Oh.
It's going to be
it's
just
not
to
that
the
one.
right of that. So as you're looking east.
Okay, and it's
So
not
looking
right
at Belzer, it's going to be, the other sign was way down there by the entrance.
Yeah.
It's going to be towards the other entrance of the building.
So kind of halfway between Richard and Cato? Okay.
And Mr. Smith, how are you? So is this sign similar to Lawrence North?
Yes, actually, we have 3 signs in the district currently operating: Forest Glen Elementary, Amy Beverland Elementary, and our McKinsey Career Center. Actually, we designed all 5 signs to be identical. And when we renovated those facilities is when we had those approved to put in. So we will only have 5 of these signs in the district. LC and LN will be the last 2.
Is it the same size of those, of the other schools? It's the same size?
Same size as,
Forest Glen.
McKinsey, same size as McKinsey. I think Forest Glen and Amy Beverland is a little
tiny bit smaller. Yeah.
Because it says this is 12 foot, no?
Yes.
And that's,
That's pretty big.
yeah, well,
Paul?
Keep in mind that a lot of it's the brick encasement. I mean, this is a big campus and a big building, so.
I was next to the school with what they've done.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think it's going to look big.
And the digital
Here.
display is not the
Here.
entire.
The digital display is
It'll look proportional.
5 feet high and 8 feet wide, 40 square feet, which is, in the scheme of things, pretty small amount of signage.
And this is, I'm guessing, is part of the school, when we did that referendum on the,
Yeah.
what do you call it, rehabilitating the schools, or whatever that was. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? No. We'll hear from any remonstrators for or against the petition.
Daniel Rapp at 5718 Waldenwood Drive. My concern about this particular sign is driver safety. Quite obvious, he does not drive on 56th Street between Richard traffic light and Cadle traffic light, where this sign is going to be in between. And I go with the ideal that if you put up a neon sign, 40 square foot, you can get like 5 lines of text, 20 words. A driver is going to look at it while they're driving down the road, and that's going to take 5+ seconds or more. And that means that they're going to maybe cause a traffic accident, get rear-ended. And I'll be the first to tell you that on that little block of road, students do not always cross at the light. If what you need is a driver looking at this sign saying, New Year's Eve party, boom, hit a student. So I am concerned with driver safety, having a neon sign, period. Now, I want to correct one thing that was said that I disagree with since I live on Wallingwood. He said that this sign will be turned off at night. About a year ago, when they want to take the 20 acres from Boy Scout, we complained about the lights from the football stadium being on all night. It's really annoying to get up 5 o'clock in the morning and see the football stadium lights still on. They said we would take care of it. Only a month ago, I saw those stadium lights on all night long. So them saying that they're going to be a good neighbor, their actions do not show it. But the bottom line, driver distraction with a neon sign. They will not be reading it when they're at the light stopped. They're going to be reading it while they're driving. And that's my position. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
well, I hear you on that, actually. Now, how far do you live from that school? You're like around the corner, or where's
I'll
your?
put it this way. The school property is my backyard.
Is your backyard? Okay.
Just about.
So, I mean, have you seen accidents happening there? Because they had that, like we were just talking earlier about the red sign that they had before. I mean, well, right now 56 is kind of tore up, but have you seen accidents where students have been injured?
I make it a point not to drive on 56th Street during school hours. I will go out the back way.
Yeah.
I simply don't drive there.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen police cars there from time to time over the past 30 years.
Okay.
So they're there, they happen.
Well, and just to piggyback on that question about public, as it relates to public safety, Mr. Calderon or Mr. Smith, do we have any, with the other sign locations, let's say, for example, McKenzie, that's a fairly busy street as well. Granted, it's 2-lane and not 4-lane, but considering where other signs are placed in the township, in the city of Lawrence,
Right, this is more
do
walk.
we have any correlation between increased accidents?
We have none at this point. I can tell you, we've had one accident at McKenzie. It was the fault of the driver, student driver, turning into the property and overcorrected and hit our sign. So other than that, distraction of the property or accidents on the roads, we don't have any that I'm aware of.
Can I also ask, as far as sidewalk goes, there will still be sidewalk here, is that correct?
Yes, there's a sidewalk in place currently.
Where are the crossing areas? Are those,
Or they'll be at Cato Drive
yeah,
and then also at Richard, which we currently have in place.
same? Got it.
I'd love to see sidewalks for students walking to school from the other side of the interstate, but I think that's beyond the city of Lawrence discussion.
Yeah.
But it really is a shame to see students walking down a median of a busy 4-lane road driving 50-plus miles an hour.
Yeah, well, as a parent of
There
one,
is a speed limit.
sometimes they just do it to drive us
Just
crazy.
suggesting.
Got it.
What's that suggested?
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you, sir. Any other remonstrators for or against the petition? Oh, we'll hear from the city of Lawrence. He's hiding over there.
I would have got you.
I know.
Good evening again. Dan Zerner with the City of Lawrence. We have reviewed this petition and understanding there were numerous commitments when the schools wanted to build this project, that this was discussed at the very beginning. We're for it. With one consideration we might like to see is rather than the sign go static at midnight, we thought it might be more appropriate for the neighborhood if it could be 10 o'clock. I don't know that there's much activity occurs between 10 and midnight anyway. So that was just one consideration that we might like to consider. But other than that, we'd like to recommend approval. Any questions?
Any questions for the city?
No.
No. Okay. We'll hear from the petitioner.
First, the easy one. The school district will agree to turn the sign off beginning at 10 p.m. That's not a problem. Secondly, to address the remonstrators' concern, which I believe is a legitimate concern, I think that's why you place these signs with enough separation from a lighted intersection, so you're not trying to make a quick decision to make a turn at an intersection when you read a sign. The other thing, which is maybe a little less intuitive, but also true, and this is the reason why you have NDOT, for example, that has digital signs, if you will, not as sophisticated as this, highway, is because you can see it more clearly from a further distance, which actually promotes safety. So think about the description of the old manual reader board. You can't hardly see it until you're on top of it. And if, say, you're advertising for a teacher-parent conference night on September 21st, and you coming to a manual reader board and you're right up on it on a busy street, it's hard to see. That's when you're going to be more inclined to stare at the sign for a longer period of time. When you can see it more clearly from a greater distance, you're going to be more inclined to make a safety decision. And there have been many studies on these type of signs, and the real issue is not to have the stuff that's Times Square or Vegas, the blinking, the scrolling, that's totally distracting. Reading something clearly from a better distance actually promotes safety. So we'll amend our commitments accordingly, turn it off at 9 and get those revised and signed and recorded.
Okay, so
9 or
Anybody
10?
answer anything else?
10.
10 p.m. I mean, I like it from an energy consumption standpoint too. The less energy that everyone around us is consuming, the less pressure we have on the grid.
They're very efficient. They're
Yeah.
LED, so
Sure.
yeah,
So, yeah, one less hour of energy consumption is great for me.
exactly.
Board ready to vote?
Yes.
22, LUSV 19, 7300 East 56th Street, variance of sign ordinance table 744-906-12D to allow a monument sign that is 12 foot tall by 10 feet wide, 5 feet maximum height permitted, and table 744-906-12G to allow a 40-foot square digital display. The board has unanimously granted your petition. Thank you. We'll hear the last case, which is 22 LUSV 20, 11915 Pendleton Pike. Variance of sign ordinance, Chapter 744, Section 11A, 7 to convert an existing static sign west side of a digital display and legalize the existing digital display east side. The sign is 405 feet from a protected district, 600 feet required. Good evening, sir.
I've got some handouts here.
Okay.
How many do I need? 6. 6.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and members of the BZA. My name is Dan Van Treese, and I'm the owner of Worth Outdoor, which has operated the advertising sign at 11915 Pendleton Pike that is the subject of this variance request since 2009. To help familiarize you with the sign we are talking about, I'll refer to the handout you should have all received, including its location, how the sign looks to drivers along Pendleton Pike, where it is located on the property, and its location relative to adjacent properties. On page 1 of the overhead view of the advertising sign and the property where it's located, along with surrounding properties, on page 2 is a close-up view of the sign, and on page 3 and 4 you can see the view of the sign from Pendleton Pike from both directions. To give you a brief history about this sign, Worth built it as a traditional static billboard in 2009 and changed it to a digital board in 2015 and recently changed it back static to resolve an issue with Marion County. Today's variance request is to allow Worth to upgrade the existing sign from a traditional static billboard to, again, including cutting-edge technology, sign technology, as it has been for the past 7 years. Worth is requesting several development variances from the standards in the sign section of the zoning code, including converting an existing outdoor advertising sign to a digital sign, locating the sign within 600 feet of a protected district, and allowing digital messages to display for a minimum of 8 seconds. We don't believe that a use variance is necessary since we can't find any section in the code specifically prohibiting digital advertising signs. The only prohibition in the advertising section of the ordinance mentioning LED or digital appears in the highlighted sections on page 5 and 6 of the handout. The highlighted section on page 5 is entitled Video, LED, Light Emitting Diode, LCD, Liquid Crystal Display, or electronically powered. Section states in reference to video, LED, or LCD signs that no sign shall be permitted which displays video or emitting graphics, which by our reading seems to say that there is only a prohibition on LED sign if it displays video or emitting graphics. The sign Worth will be installing is LED and will not display videos or emitting graphics. It is important to note both NDOT and the Federal Highway Administration have allowed digital advertising signs since 2007, and Worth will comply with these rules. Worth agrees that the development standards we need to seek variances from are for the separation of distance from a protected district, since the sign is 405 feet from a protected district, and for static hold time of 8 seconds as the commitments in the staff recommendations state. Please note that the highlighted sections are from the sign section of the ordinance that allows digital displays. This term digital displays is defined under the ordinance in the highlighted section of page 7 in the handout. It is important to note that at the end of the definition, it specifically states there shall not be construed as a prohibition on the use of LED technology, which seems to be contrary to what is viewed as a prohibition of this technology as applied to advertising signs. Also, in the regulation of digital display sections of the code of the highlighted on pages 8 and 9 of the handout, you can see the digital displays, which arguably includes digital advertising signs, are in fact allowed with certain restrictions. We would argue that there is no ban or prohibition on the use of digital technology. Worst proposed change to the existing sign faces from a static to digital display will comply with the applicable restrictions for advertising signs in the zoning and subdivision ordinance. The variances, if approved by this board today, and regulations established by the state of Indiana. Let's talk about the variance requirements. As the BZA for Lawrence, you must consider certain elements as stated in the ordinance when reaching your decision to grant this variance request. We will address those elements specifically in a moment. However, we must first point out that we believe the requirements set forth in the Marion County and Lawrence Ordinance Sign Code act as a prior restraint on our constitutional right to speak. The requirements as stated in the ordinance give the board unbridled discretion in its decision-making process by failing to set forth objective standards for the board to apply to reach its decision, and sets no timeline by which the board must act. I'd like not to go through each of the elements from the findings of fact to explain why our variance should be granted. The first one, the grant will not be injurious to the general health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The use of the location for a digital advertising sign is consistent with the underlying zoning. This advertising sign has been on the property since 2009 and has caused no negative impacts to the general health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community, and has in fact benefited the community by promoting local businesses in the city. In the past, Worth has worked with Lawrence by providing space on the digital sign free of cost to promote community events, along with the fire department and the police department. Converting the sign to digital will increase the opportunity for promoting local businesses and city-sponsored events. A digital sign will also provide expanded public service and safety messaging, including Amber Alerts, criminal at-large warnings, weather alerts, and other warnings to the motoring public when time is of the essence. As you can see on both pages 2 and 4 of the handout, the configuration of the sign is oriented toward Pendleton Pike, and the view from the park entrance that is approximately 700 feet away, as shown in the circle on page 10 of the handout. No portion of the sign's faces or the LED lights will shine toward or into the park due to both the orientation of the sign towards Pendleton Pike. The sign will be visually obstructed due to the height of the business structures located between the sign and the park, which is the shopping center that's there. To reduce the sign's energy usage, which, by the way, is less than average American home with 2 electric vehicles, the sign will be equipped with state-of-the-art solar panels that will provide a clean source of supplemental energy that will reduce the sign's reliance on energy generated by fossil fuels. Finally, any opinion in opposition to these signs usually states that digital displays may cause distractions to drivers. However, this is a mere opinion by opponents, and has been debunked by what is considered as the definitive study conducted by the Federal Highway Administration in 2013. A summary of the study and an email detailing the contents of the study are on pages 10 through 14 of the handout. The study is considered to be the gold standard for measuring potential driver distraction in the presence of digital billboards. In fact, there have been no studies completed in nearly 10 years since the Federal Highway Administration study was released, and they have that have refuted the Federal Highway Administration findings. Opponents fail to provide any reference to any national or local studies to support their personal opinions. Number two, the use or value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. There has been an advertising sign on this property for 13 years. There are no documented negative impacts on the adjacent properties. Property values have not decreased, and properties have developed unhindered by the existing sign. The sign has not had an adverse impact on adjacent properties, and instead has helped these and other local businesses grow, which increases the value of these properties and creates jobs in the community. Number three, the need for the variance arises from some condition particular to the property involved, and the condition is not due to the general condition of the neighborhood. The property has been used for an advertising sign, as I stated, for 13 years. The location of the sign is in an area of the property that was not usable for any other type of development. Worth is asking for allowance to change the technology used on the existing sign to achieve the highest and best use for the area of the property. Prohibiting this change in technology creates a competitive disadvantage for Worth versus other digital media outlets which utilize digital technology. Worth is merely seeking to upgrade its technology in order to remain competitive, relevant in an ever-changing world. Granting the variance levels the playing field for Worth to compete with other digital media. The digital technology upgrade of the sign also provide an outlet for free emergency alerts when time is of the essence. This would not be possible if the sign remains current static state. Number four, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance constitutes an unusual and unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is requested. The current location of this sign is in an area of Lawrence appropriate for outdoor advertising signs in general and digital technology in particular. The area near the sign is a vibrant commercial area which continues to grow with new local businesses. These homegrown businesses compete for customers and clients with those in larger neighboring cities and will benefit from the opportunity to advertise their goods and services to the motoring public which travels past this location. Without this outlet, the local businesses risk decline in their revenues as traffic passes them by. Worth cannot meet the demands of these businesses if it continues to use an outdated method for getting these messages out. Additionally, Lawrence could utilize this sign to promote the city to businesses looking to locate here, as well as to advertise community events as it has already done in the past. However, the outdoor advertising sign's current configuration cannot accommodate these demands and the need for immediacy using only two static advertising faces that utilize printed messages. Failing to allow the sign to be transformed to a digital advertising sign will severely limit these opportunities and be unnecessary hardship not only to the property and its use, but also to serve as a hardship to these businesses by inhibiting their ability to get their message out to the motoring public. the newest technology by allowing a change to digital faces on an existing sign. This board will be allowing the highest and best use of the property as a location for an outdoor advertising sign designed to promote businesses' growth in this community. The final, number 5, the grant does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan. The secondary use proposed by the comprehensive plan as a park would require the destruction of a vibrant local commercial center, which is not likely to occur. While the secondary proposed use expressed in the comprehensive plan is admirable, the proposed sign's location and the substantial expense difficulties required to bring the proposal in the comprehensive plan would require raising a commercial center, make it at best unlikely to occur and likely to be changed in the future versions of the comprehensive plan due to the pattern of development which has taken place. We believe that we have met the threshold elements as required by the ordinance, and the variance should be granted. Gave you guys a lot of information there. Do you guys have any questions?
That was a lot of information.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Hi, good evening. So I just want to circle back to something I want to make sure I heard it correctly. When you were talking about the view from the park toward the digital sign,
Yes.
and that the height of the buildings, the commercial center, which is the shopping center there, obstructs that?
Yeah.
Isn't the sign taller than the buildings?
No. It's, I believe it's 40 foot, but if you stand in the park, you can't see the sign.
Okay. All right, I just
that's
confirmed
what
when I heard what you said.
Trace, that's what I was trying to articulate.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The city has asked for some constraints on the sign. Have you agreed to those?
I've agreed to everything in the staff report, and additionally, I've agreed to the solar, and I believe the language on another variance that you passed. Let me find it here. Renee and I discussed it earlier last week. Power will be supplemented with solar power, and I've agreed to that. We've actually got some.
The messages will only be static, and
There'll be no
at
video
least
or.
8 seconds, and then they flip, and
Right.
looks like you sell to
Eight-
more advertisers.
Tom, 8 seconds is the standard in the industry. It's what the NDOT has put out. That's their requirement.
Yeah.
I've already have a NDOT permit for that sign to operate digitally.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
Yeah, I mean, you highlight this video graphics. So are you not going to put any video or graphics on those signs?
No, so when you have a digital sign, when they talk about static, okay, that means that it changes 8 seconds and you have an ad to read. It's not, so you can also have a sign that.
Letters?
What?
Just letters then?
Yeah, it's just pictures and letters. It's
Well,
not.
When you hear the word graphic, what does that mean to you?
Well, it would be a motion picture.
Will that be video? Well, what's the
Video
difference between
and-
video and graphic?
It would be moving like graphics, like you have a starburst on a message. That'd be the graphics part.
So that would be more of an animation to me. The thing is, I guess, I'm just trying to understand what you're talking about, because, like, for example, my kids, they like graphic novels, right? And so those are like comic.
I'm sorry, I hardly hear
Oh,
you.
so for example, like my kids read the graphic novels, right? So we have comic books. They're basic comic books. And the graphic is the picture. So I'm trying to understand is, I guess, you're saying you're not going to do video or graphics. I'm trying to understand what that means.
Well, we're not going to have any video on there. And graphics to us in the industry is like movement on the sign. Starburst would be the way to have movement. That's what we're only going to have static, which is mean it's once the ad goes up, it doesn't change. It only changes after the 8 seconds that it appears.
Okay, so you will have pictures and letters.
Yes,
They will not be animated.
correct.
The way I understand, it'll just be like the old-fashioned vinyl sign, but it just flips. So you have the same look, and then 8 seconds later, you have another look.
That makes, yeah.
So it's like they can sell to an advertiser many times over. The vinyl sign was just one picture, and this will be, I don't know, 10 pictures or
It's actually, you know, you can look at it a couple different ways. You know, there's a lot of waste to printing all that vinyl. There's a lot of oil used to print all that vinyl, ink and plastic to make the vinyl to stretch. When it was developed, it was revolutionary for the industry because you had to get out there with paper and paste and actually post the ads on the signs. And then you'd have, you know, they'd be dilapidated, they'd be blowing around and come off it really elevated the industry. This is the next step for the industry. You can serve a lot more people, and you can also, it's more economic. I can offer advertising. I just had a call today before I came over to the hearing, and it's a nursing, they're wanting to get nurses, and she wants to be on there for a year. Affordably, I can give her a better rate because I have other messages on the sign, okay, that covers the cost of the operation of the sign and the expense of the sign. So it's definitely the way to go. And Joe Caldron mentioned in his presentation about the school sign that you could, it's actually safer because you can read it, just like the old, you know, static boards. Some of the advertising, it is difficult to read on the static boards. As far as the vinyl, when I say static, I mean a traditional static billboard. I hope I've answered. And by the way, for the record,
Although, would you agree, though, that there's a difference between a billboard and a sign at a school for the school? You'd agree there's a difference, though? I mean,
yeah, sure, they're certainly different.
On-premises
One is but not the clarity of being able to read the message. There's no difference.
Sure, but I'm saying the difference between our ability to approve on-premises sign versus a digital billboard, they're different. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing is, you had mentioned that digital billboards are not distracting to drivers, and this is kind of talking about what you're talking about now, but isn't that the point of a digital billboard? Or to
be distracting?
Isn't that what you tell, like, the people who are advertising? Like, more people will look.
Same amount of people look.
But you were just saying that, like, a vinyl sign, people don't.
I just cited it. If you look at the handout that I gave you, the Federal Highway Administration study was the definitive study, and it's actually less than 2 seconds. It's actually 0.2 of a second less looking at the sign than a static sign. If you read this, if you get into the weeds of the study, it's less than 2 seconds.
My other question is, you know, we're talking about production of waste, right? We're talking about, you know, production of waste for the vinyl that goes onto the billboard. How many are they LED lights? Like how many, like panels or whatever of LED lights? How many panels go up on a billboard?
Depends on it depends on the millimeter as far as how good the picture is. Depends on how many. So the better the picture, there's more diodes. It's called a diode that goes on the plastic panels that go together like Lego.
Okay, so how many go onto this billboard?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know how many go on it.
What's the lifespan of those?
Oh, about 10 years, 100,000 hours, somewhere around in there.
Okay, so and then do they just get thrown in the trash?
Well, they get recycled.
Get recycled?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you talked about local jobs. Do you hire locally for repairing or replacing these, or?
It's my son. He's lived in Lawrence his whole life, so I would say yes.
Okay.
We're just a small company.
And the other thing, I mean, I appreciate for the sake of thoroughness that you read the entire.
I can't hear you.
So for the sake of thoroughness, I understand you read the entire petition, but You said that, we're putting a restraint on your speech, and I wonder if you could tell me more about that in your own words.
I would have to refer to my attorney, and he's not here, as far as how that it applies. It's been adjudicated.
Okay.
I'm not prepared to speak on that topic.
Or you have any
I'm sorry, just because I'm curious, although this question may not be germane specifically to what we do, but you've mentioned supporting local businesses a couple of times.
Yes.
So I'm going to put my old Chamber of Commerce cap on for a moment. Do local Lawrence businesses get a better rate than a national customer on your sign?
Yes, they do.
Interesting. Okay.
And the grill is not located. They've been on my sign since I built it. Royal Spa is a local business. They've been on my sign since I built it.
Okay.
I've had the fire department, the police department on the sign at no cost, just because I grew up here. I've lived here my whole life. My family's been here since 1960. And for the record, I don't have a shed in my front yard. It has to be maybe another Van Treese. Clarify that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Ventures? Thank you. We'll hear for any remonstrators for or against the petition. We'll hear from the City of Lawrence. Dan?
Dan Zerner with the City of Lawrence. It's been a long evening. Everybody's done really well. I do think, for the record, we should go over the 7 commitments that we're requiring or requesting with approval of this by this board. The digital billboard shall contain no content that moves, appears to move, flashes, twirls, scrolls, changes color, in any manner imitates movement of text, background, or feature of the display. Billboard will change instantaneously from one static message to another. The digital billboard screen will display a message for at least 8 seconds. Digital billboard shall not attempt or appear to attempt to regulate, warn, or direct the movement of traffic, or that interfere with, imitate, or resemble an official traffic sign, signal, or device. The digital billboard shall possess and utilize a light-sensing device with automatic dimming capabilities to adjust the brightness of signs so that the maximum luminant level is not more than 3/10 foot candles over ambient light. At all times, the variance is in effect. Worth Outdoor LLP or its successors and interests must provide the name and phone numbers for at least 2 persons who have the ability and authority to make modifications to the display and lighting levels of the billboard. Should Worth or its successor and interest fail to respond within 48 hours to a call from the city related to the digital billboard, the city may turn off the power to the billboard. In the event of a malfunction in the proper operation of the digital billboard, the screen shall either be frozen in a dark or blank position or must be completely shut off within 12 hours when Worth or its successor's interest, or at least one of the contact persons referenced number 6 being advised of to obtain knowledge of the malfunction. And finally, the digital billboard shall have a solar panel affixed to it, which you heard Mr. Worth agree to. If these conditions are committed to and met, the city recommends approval of his petition.
Any questions for Dan? Thank you.
You.
Petitioner?
Oh, I'm here. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Merry Christmas to you.
You, Dan.
Do you have anything to add?
At this time, I don't have any other additional comments. Just want to wish the board Merry Christmas. Happy
Same to you.
Hanukkah.
Any other questions?
And you're okay with those commitments?
Yes, Tom.
So we're voting on this subject
Yes,
to
we are.
those commitments.
Variance of sign ordinance, Chapter 744, Section 11A, to convert an existing static sign to a digital display and legalize the existing digital sign on the east side. The sign is 405 feet from a protected district, 600 feet required, and Mr. Van Treese has committed to all 8 of the recommendations the city has put forth. board has granted your petition 4-1. If there's no other business, the Lawrence Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy holidays.